So this is a really great example of the Pancake Inquiry Lab, where you had to come up with your own idea about pancakes and create an experiment. So what makes a pancake fluffy is the question. Nicely written. The heading is nice up here. Good title. Everything looks good. Okay? So what I really like here is the abstract. I'm going to read the abstract to you and point out the different parts of it. But this, again, an abstract is a summary of the whole experiment. And so they start with the question. My question is, what makes a pancake fluffy? Boom, it's been restated right there. And then you get into the research, right? After some research, this is what I have found. The thing that makes pancakes fluffy is gluten. So you might be saying, wow, how'd they come up with that? Well, they start the very next sentence with a quote. With additional mixing, the proteins create a tighter and tighter web-like network of proteins that are able to trap air bubbles. Parentheses, Esme Trance 2013. Oh, okay, that's where they got the idea that pancakes are fluffy because of gluten. Excellent. Really nice use of a reference. Okay? Their quote should have been after the word bubbles, but that's a really minor grammatical thing. But the use of the reference was really good. Okay? They start the next sentence. Additionally, quote, too much mixing of batter means the gluten proteins will bond too tightly with other gluten protein. Too much bonding means tough pancakes with no room for air bubbles. Parentheses, Ashley A, comma, 2014, period. End parentheses. Again, the quote's out of place. Should be at the end of bubbles, but that's okay. All right? Two really nice references. Really support this idea that it's gluten that's affecting the fluffiness of the pancakes. And then they're going on. So they just told us the question, the research. This information led me to the conclusion, and when they say conclusion, they really mean hypothesis, that if the pancake batter is mixed for not too long and not too short, then the pancakes will become very fluffy because the gluten in the pancakes would trap the highest possible amount of air bubbles. There's the hypothesis restated. Nice if, then, because. Now they're getting into how they did the experiment. Their procedure. To test my hypothesis, I conducted an experiment in which I made 3 batches of pancakes. One where the batter was just combined, one where the batter was smooth, and one where the batter was smooth with an additional 3 minutes of mixing. Perfect. Nice and shortly stated. Now we're getting to the results. The batter that was smooth ended up being the fluffiest. Very nice, very brief and perfect. Here's the conclusion. In conclusion, my hypothesis was correct, and the thing that makes pancakes fluffy is gluten. Okay? So these lowercase i's kind of detract a little bit because that's not proper, but otherwise, besides the quotes, this is a really nice, well-written abstract. Really good work. Their hypothesis section. Look for the if, then, because. If the pancake batter is mixed for not too long and not too short, then the pancakes will become very fluffy because the gluten in the pancakes would trap the highest possible amount of air bubbles. There was the because. I didn't highlight that with my voice. Experimental design. Again, nothing goes after here because these indented topics are the experimental design. If I wanted to nitpick, I would say just bring this in under here with a little tabbing, but otherwise this is really nicely done. Materials and equipment are broken up with commas, and the procedure is a numbered step by step. They didn't tell me the steps of the scientific method here. They actually told me how to do the experiment. They didn't get bogged down with the recipe of the pancakes. They got to the important stuff like making 3 equal-sized batches and mixing them differently. How am I going to control the experiment? By turning the heat to 8, putting tablespoon-sized globs of pancake batter so that we're measuring, right? Cook the pancakes for a measured, specific amount of time of 50 seconds. Those are the things that are important for a procedure. They did a nice job of identifying the variables. These should not be bolded, just the words independent variable, dependent variable, control variable, but otherwise really nice content. The amount of time the pancake batter has been mixed is the independent variable. That's what they manipulated or changed. The dependent or responding variable was the fluffiness, and they specified that meant height of the pancake. That was very important. Otherwise, I wouldn't know what fluffy meant. Okay? Control variable, it's listed in the procedure, but they put the pan's heat, the pancake batter's ingredients, the cooking time, and the size of the pancakes. Excellent job. The results section. Table, graph, analysis. Perfect. Look at this table. It's got the 3 types of pancake batter. It's got the 6 pancakes for each group. The height is measured that the fluffiness that they each achieved. This person totaled those 6 pancakes for each group and then divided by 6 to get me an average height of 14 millimeters, 16 millimeters, and 13 millimeters. How do I know it's millimeters? Because it tells me right here in the top of the table. Maybe I don't know what all these numbers mean. They're kind of confusing. That's why you always have a graph, and this graph is very well done with a nice title. The key tells me what these colored bars mean, tell me the 3 different groups, and I have axes labeled so I know exactly what I'm looking at, and I can clearly see from this that the mixed until smooth group had the highest average pancake height. Their analysis spells these things out. As the data table shows, each group of pancake batter was tested with 6 pancakes. The data shows that the pancake batter group at the highest overall average height was the mixed until smooth group at 16 millimeters. Next, with the second highest overall average height, is just the mixed group at 14 millimeters. So they're specifying a few points. They're showing me what's important. They're making sure I'm seeing what they're trying to show me by explaining that. And that's exactly what an analysis is for. The conclusion, using recall method. Okay? In this experiment, I wanted to find out what made pancakes fluffy. R, they just restated the question. Now the E, this is a nice long E, did a very nice job. It incorporates a lot. So let me go over it. To answer this question, I did some research and found out the thing that makes pancakes fluffy is gluten. Here's a fact about the science of pancake, what gluten has to do with it. Again, they don't really need to set that up. They could just go into it, right? Quote, further mixing allows the end of a gluten protein to bond with the end of another gluten protein. As the gluten proteins come in contact with one another, they continue to bond. With additional mixing, the proteins create a tighter and tighter web-like network of proteins that are able to trap air bubbles. S. Matrons, 2013. This statement shows how mixing pancake batters allows gluten to trap air bubbles within the pancakes that will make them fluffier. This is really nice. They don't just give me a quote. They explain what they mean by the quote, what it's supposed to mean to you. However, according to this statement, if you mix pancake batter too much, the pancakes will lose their fluffiness. Here's the quote. Too much mixing of batter means the gluten proteins will bond too tightly with other gluten protein. Too much bonding means tough pancakes with no room for air bubbles. Ashley A., 2014. Both of these pieces of information combined led me to my conclusion, again, this is a hypothesis, that if the pancake batter is mixed for not too long and not too short, then the pancakes would become very fluffy because the gluten in the pancake would trap the highest possible amount of bubbles. Okay? So this is still the E for explain. They're explaining their research, they're explaining how they came up with their hypothesis, and they're going to now start to explain how they tested this. I tested my hypothesis by conducting an experiment in which I made 3 different batches of pancake batter, one where the batter was just combined, one where the batter was smooth, and one where the batter was smooth with an additional 3 minutes of mixing. I controlled as many variables as I could and washed and dried the pan between cooking the different batches of pancake batter. I made 6 pancakes for each batter, measured their height, and recorded the results into a data table. Now we're getting to the next section, the C for call back. What are the results? My hypothesis did end up being correct, and the batter mixed until it was smooth had the highest overall average height at 16 millimeters. However, something interesting that I noticed was that according to the data that I gathered, if you overmix the pancake batter, the pancakes would turn out less fluffy than if you had just mixed the pancake batter until everything was combined. Meaning that overmixing pancake batter is the worst thing that can happen to a pancake that's supposed to be fluffy. So we've gotten from the callback into an analysis telling us why things are going to be happening, right? The data that I collected also appear to be in line with the 2 theories that I found during my research, since the fluffiness of the pancake did rise when the pancake batter was mixed a lot, as well as decrease when the pancake batter was overmixed. They drew some support by their research to help support these ideas. Now we're getting into the L, right? The lapses, the first L. I did make a few mistakes during the experiment when I was trying to flip the pancakes, but I don't think this was affected the results too much. Nice use of 2 there, by the way. If any other scientist does want to recreate my experiment, I would recommend doing it on a much larger scale because if anything, the biggest weakness of my experiment was that it had a relatively small sample size. I completely agree with that. They should have done at least 10 pancakes. In conclusion, this experiment has given me many answers and many questions. I have successfully solved the question in this experiment, and now we're getting to the last L, the light bulb moment. And in the future, I would like to see if gluten has any other effects on pancakes under certain conditions. For example, does gluten react differently depending on the size of the pancake? For my next experiment, I could try to find out what a pancake made without gluten would be like. Would it be crunchy, or maybe it would just be really flat? And so they had all the elements of recall. They used their references correctly. And the last thing I want to point out are these two excellent resources in APA style. Okay? So this is a really nice example. I hope you learn from it, and we can get more people producing reports like this.